For those who don't know, I'm Graham Scher, Assistant Dean for Employer Engagement, and I'm here to spend about 15-20 minutes teaching you how not to screw up your summer opportunity. Ordinarily, when we do this live, I try to get a little survey of the audience to determine how many folks are 1Ls, how many are 2Ls, but I can't see you, I can't do that, so I'm just going to speak to you as though you are both, or some of you, some of each group is in the audience. Quick moment of housekeeping. You can ask questions throughout my talk by chat. No one will be able to see your questions other than the hosts, myself and my colleague Amanda Perez. And at the end of my talk, you'll be unmuted and you'll be able to ask questions orally. Okay, so I'm going to present this program differently than I have in the past because this summer is unique as a result of COVID-19. Typically, we talk about a summer program that is 100% on site, at the employer site. This year, we don't know how much of the summer will be on site. So I'm going to present this as though you will spend the beginning of the summer working remotely, and then you will have an opportunity to work on site. If I'm mistaken, nothing of this will steer you wrong. And you will get a sense along the way of what content is intended or is most applicable for an on-site experience versus remotely. But most of the content will apply wherever it is that you're working. Final note, you will see that a fair amount of the content is specific to law firms. And that relates to things like social events, for example. But we're not going to have social events at the beginning of the summer and possibly at all during the summer unless we get to work on site. Number one. Number two, again, all of the other content is applicable to all settings, whether it's government, public interest, or a court. Okay? So if you remember nothing else from our special time together today, remember this. Your summer, if you're working at a law firm, is a 5-week interview, generally speaking. Most firms have reduced their summer programs from 8 or 10 weeks to 5, possibly 6. Frankly, I'm not sure what the courts are doing and the government agencies, but the bottom line is approach every workday as though you're interviewing, which is to say you're going to put your best foot forward and make your best impression every single day of the work week. Our goals here should be obvious for those working at law firms, particularly as part of summer program. Our job is to end the summer with a job offer in hand, a permanent offer in hand, even if we don't want to join the firm after that summer, and I'll touch upon that later. Whether or not we're working in a setting where a permanent job offer is possible, we want to come out of the summer with a substantive writing sample that we can use in our next job search. And of course, we want to leave there with at least 2 people who are prepared to say good things about us. And in the case of government and public interest employers, which in many cases don't hire brand new lawyers right after graduation, we want to leave a good impression so that they remember us when we are eligible to apply for a job. So for example, the district attorney and the public defender, their application processes don't begin until one is admitted to the bar. So we can't apply right away, but we want to leave them anxious to hire us at the first opportunity. The metrics of our summer are the quality of our work and our behavior, the good judgment that we reflect. And of course, the number one work skill in law is legal writing. So do your best work every time. Do it the first time, do it every time. Drill deep in your analysis and pay attention to detail, okay, in great respect, particularly vis-a-vis formatting and typos. By and large, there is no tolerance for errors in written product. So my recommendation to you is before you submit any work product, print it out, because proofreading is more effective on the page than on the screen. Basically, if you dress for business every day and you behave professionally every day, you're going to be fine. Now, some of you may be sitting there and tisting and thinking, who is not going to behave appropriately or professionally? And the answer is students who are not sitting here attending with you now. I have stories galore of people who have botched up their summer, not because they didn't do good work, but because they didn't behave professionally and responsibly. And I'll get into some examples of that a little while, just a little bit. So every law student and every lawyer has two clients: the person giving you assignments in the office and the person who's paying for that work to be done, whether it's a private client or a state entity. And your first job or your first task is to learn what the preferences are of the person assigning you work. And that means, what do they like in the way of emails? Do they like lengthy emails, or do they like 2-word emails? I know of a general counsel of a company here in LA who has a rule: he will not read more than 1 paragraph of an email. So he advises all his attorneys that if they can't convey their information or their concern in 1 paragraph, they need to schedule a meeting or a phone call with him. And of course, part of being a professional is being dependable, is giving your boss the comfort and the confidence that you can be dependent upon to be reached and to be responsive and to get work done well and to get it done on time. Now, our first days this year are going to be different than a normal first day. We're not going to have to map out our directions because we're going into the next room or we're sitting down at our desk. But these things will be apt if we do get to have a first day on site. And the rule simply is, show up a little bit early, bring whatever you're instructed to, smile, shake people's hands, and err on the side of formality. Don't start calling Mr. Gibson Jim. Call Mr. Gibson until you're corrected. Again, dependability, excuse me. It's being responsive. Check your email and your voicemail over evenings and weekends and acknowledge them. Depending upon the nature of the email or the voicemail, you may not be required to do any work, though you may, but it's essential that you acknowledge receipt of it. Thank you, I got your email. I'll have this for you whenever it is you asked for. I'll have this done by Monday. Whatever the communication is calling for, at minimum, acknowledge it. If you don't, or if you don't check your email and your voicemails on the weekend, you can have an embarrassing Monday morning when you find out you missed the team meeting because notice of it first went out on Sunday or on Saturday. As silly as it sounds, when you answer the phone, answer it with your name. I answer the phone, this is Graham, or this is Graham, sure. That's how you should too, except with your name, of course. Now, if you are working in an unpaid setting this summer, as an extern or as a volunteer, treat your job and approach your job as though it is a paid job. Okay, resist the temptation to think at any time, well, you know, I can probably blow off Friday and go to Vegas with my brother and his friends because I'm not getting paid. That's wrong. Treat it as though you are getting paid. Your employer will notice and you will leave the summer having created a great impression, and he will leave it with good references. Now, meetings, which you will have initially by phone, if not all summer, treat it as you would a physical meeting. Show up before the start. Always have a writing instrument. Okay, if you show up at a meeting or if you go into a lawyer's office when you are summoned and you don't have a pad and a pen, you're going to be sent back to your office to get one. So just always bring it with you to meetings or when you're summoned to go speak or scheduled to go speak with an attorney. And then just have good manners, all right? Listen more than you speak. There's no necessary reason to speak at all unless you're asked a question or asked for your input. don't even, my advice is don't even bring your phone because it's a distraction. And be prepared. If a memo was circulated that relates to the agenda of the meeting, or the agenda is circulated, review it ahead of time. And remember at all times that you're working in an environment of strict confidentiality. Now, that's not too tough at home, right? Because you're not going to run into anybody in the kitchen, with the exception of perhaps your family or your roommate or your partner. But once you either get out to the world or even go out to the sidewalk, you stop talking about what goes on at work. People oftentimes think that if they're not in a work setting and it's a social setting, that, you know, they can talk about what's going on, they can complain about a matter, but they're not disclosing anything about it. And you never know who else is in the room. I know of an instance where an attorney was at a holiday party. His spouse was speaking to another attorney's spouse, and they made the connection that their spouses were opposing counsel on the same matter. And one of them volunteered that her husband hates that case. It's the boil of his existence. And on the way home, the other spouse informed her spouse of the opposing counsel's dislike for the case. And the first thing he did Monday morning was he turned up the flame on that case, because he knew the other lawyer hated it and figured he would exploit that and move forward aggressively just to exploit the weakness of the other attorney. So basically, when you leave your home or you leave your office, even if it's go to lunch with colleagues, you don't talk about work anymore. Okay? All right. Assignments. Always make sure you know what you're being asked to do. And that means two things. Number one, what is the issue that I'm being asked to research, or what is the document I'm being asked to draft? And then find out how they want the product presented to them. So if you're assigned a task to find out whether or not your corporate client or your retailer client can discriminate against people who are pregnant in the 48 continental states, you want to find out, does your boss want a memo? Does your boss want a short verbal or oral reply such as, yes, everywhere but Delaware? Or does your boss want a law review article? Be sure what it is you're asked to produce, and then seek a time estimate for it. How long do you think this might take me? Now, you don't trust the time estimate. It's often too low because, depending upon the seniority of the attorney, it may have been years since they were a summer associate or a 2L or a 1L even, and worked on a matter with as little experience and background as you have. So they may have a distorted sense of how long it may take, but it's still valuable to get their estimate so that you can follow up with them along the way and update them on your progress, because the last thing you ever want to do is wait till the day of the deadline and say, you know, I couldn't get it done. I only got as far as the Mason-Dixon line or the Mississippi River. So you want to let them know along the way. Say, for example, an attorney gives you a 10-hour time estimate, and when you're 3 hours in, you have barely scratched 10% of the states. Then you send an email or you pick up the phone, you call and say, I want to circle back with you. I've already used 25% of the time, but I've only reached 10% of the content. Shall I continue this way, or are there any adjustments you might want me to make? Okay, because the 11th commandment of the workplace is nobody likes surprises. So never surprise anybody unless you're completing something ahead of deadline and it's still a wonderful product. Always try to find the answer to the question or the assignment before asking for help. But if you do need help, don't be bashful, okay? So start out on your own so you don't look like you need your hand held. But don't invest too much time. If you find you're not getting traction, it's fine to ask further questions or to ask for help. It doesn't always have to be of the assigning attorney. Maybe there's a mid-level attorney in between you who you could go and ask. Be as thorough as you possibly can. Never produce a draft, even if you're asked, just produce a draft. Just bring me a draft. I just need a draft. Do the best work you can, regardless of whether or not you're asked to do a draft, because they don't always mean it. Spell check, but don't rely on it, and proofread everything. Now, sometimes there will be an attorney at the firm who is assigned to be your mentor, your big sister, and they may say, hey, I'd be happy to look at your assignments before you submit them. Take advantage of that. By all means, take advantage of that. And last but not least, avoid apostrophes. We all use them incorrectly at least 50% of the time, so don't take a chance. And finally, approach every assignment from the standpoint of, I'm trying to bring value. Okay, so here's an example. There were a couple attorneys at a big firm some years back who were given an assignment. They came back 2 or 3 days later and they told the assigning attorney, we couldn't find anything, or we couldn't find a way for the client to do what you wanted us to find, or we can't find a way for the client to do what they want. And the attorney said to them, how do you expect me to bill for 2 lawyers' time over 3 days to tell the client, nah, can't do it? That's worthless to me. I need you to go back and creatively try to find some way that our client can attempt to do what they want to achieve so that we bring value to the client. So always keep that in mind. Always try to bring value. And in the case of a summer clerk or an intern, value is making your boss's life easier by doing top quality work on time. If you can, approach your work as though the client is yours, which is to say, take ownership of it. Sometimes when we're a 1L or a 2L or even a new lawyer, we unconsciously approach work assignments like homework. I got the assignment, I did the homework, I handed it in, I'll go back to my room, I'll play video games, and I'll wait for my next assignment. Well, if possible, it isn't always when we're students, but if possible, try to think about what might be the next step in the project. If you're working on a lawsuit and you're asked to produce a demur or an answer to a complaint, think what might be the next step. Go to the Rudder Guide on pretrial litigation. Maybe the next step is to file a motion for summary judgment. But if you can come back to your boss with a suggestion for a next step, that makes life easier, and it shows that you're viewing your work as though you're an attorney, as though you own the work. It's your client matter. Judgment is key when it comes to being successful over the course of the summer. There are people, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people getting negative reviews or not getting offers because they didn't exercise good judgment. It's not hard to do that. It's not hard to exercise good judgment. The key is, remember, it's a summer-long interview. Whether your summer's 5 weeks or 8 weeks, it's an interview the whole time. So you don't get too comfortable, you don't get informal, you don't tell jokes, you're friendly, you're convivial, but you don't get too comfortable. And you have to remember, there are times you may be with attorneys, whether it's on Zoom or you're out to lunch or you go out for drinks, and they may get hammered and encourage you to do so, but you shouldn't, because you have to remember they have the job already. You're still trying out. Okay. Now, if you're offered, so here's an example of profanity. Again, you may tisk tisk. I have a friend who's a recruiting manager at a national firm. At the very first gathering of the summer associates one year, she asked one of the summer associates, so, how's it going? And he replied, same old shit. Now, she herself uses the word shit liberally when she's not in her office. But her feeling was, you're a summer associate who's interviewing every single day for a job. You shouldn't be that casual, you shouldn't be using profanity with me because I'm judging you. So by and large, most of us, I think, can get through a day without using it. So just be mindful. Now, you always want to seek feedback after an assignment. You submit it and you ask, could we get together next week to discuss this? Or could I get your thoughts? When you get feedback, accept it. If you get defensive, which some people do, or if you try to explain away the feedback you're getting or the critique you're getting, you'll find you won't get feedback anymore. And without feedback, you're flying blind, okay? So accept it graciously, thank the giver, and then go on and employ the feedback, put it to good use so that they see you listened and you employed it. And the thing to bear in mind in general, particularly at law firms, people want you to be successful. They're not playing hide the ball. They're not looking to trick you. They're not looking to weed people out. They want you to succeed. So take their help. Another example of this is sometimes a firm will assign an associate to offer to review a summer clerk's work before it's submitted. And sometimes that's a standard part of the summer program at a firm. In other cases, it's a very subtle way of the firm offering help to the student without freaking the student out, without making them think, oh, do they think I need help? So it's done in this very subtle, nuanced way. If you find somebody offers you help of any kind, accept it. We had a student once who, for whatever reason, I assume it was pride, he was offered help in that manner, and he said, no, I'm good. And he was offered help a second time. He said, thanks, but I'm good. He wasn't good. He wasn't good enough, and he didn't get an offer at the end of the summer. So if you're offered it, take it. And finally, pursue experience that you want to get. Okay, don't wait to be invited. So for example, if you have a transactional assignment and you want to attend the closing or the negotiation, ask. Don't wait to be invited. The worst thing that they can do is say no. And if you are invited to come along, to observe something, participate, whatever the case may be, accept. Okay? Don't demur, don't decline, unless it would prevent you from getting your work done by deadline or getting your work done on time. Now, when we start out working remotely, we don't have the same opportunity to show good manners as we do when we're working on site. Because when we're working on site, we come in the morning and we might walk through 10 workstations or administrative carols, if you will, and have the opportunity to greet people, both on the way in, on the way out. So what I recommend is, as long as you're working remotely, at minimum, contact your own assistant every morning just to say hello, ask how they are, check in. And I recommend doing it by phone or by Zoom. We all have a tendency, and this is particularly true of students, we have a tendency to rely on digital communication. We text, we send an email. We don't, a lot of folks didn't grow up where the phone had only one purpose, which was speaking to somebody on it. So it's important that you use the phone both to speak live, and in the case of your computer, use Zoom to speak with people live when you can see each other, because it's relationship enhancing. And at the end of the day, whether you're on site or in your dining room, it's important to have FaceTime with the people you work with. Now, the good news is, if you're working remotely, there's not nearly the opportunity to gossip or engage in office politics or simply observe it, because I just don't see people getting on Zoom to do that, although it could happen spontaneously at the end of a gathering or at the end of a meeting. Avoid it. Say, I'm sorry, I gotta go, okay? Because if you're observed, if you're seen just observing, it can be presumed that you're participating. And gossip in any context, whether it's the office, in friendship groups or families, it can be toxic. So just avoid it. It serves no positive purpose. Don't complain, period. There's nothing that's beneath you as a summer intern or a summer associate. Show appreciation. The most powerful two words in the English language in the workplace are thank you. So use it liberally. People will appreciate you for it. At the end of the summer, thank the recruiting manager or the recruiting staff. There could be a manager and two coordinators. Thank the chairs of the summer program. They're often two associates. And basically thank any of the attorneys you did work for. Tell them you had a great experience and you appreciate the opportunity to have worked with them. Be friendly to everybody, including your classmates, okay? There's no reason to be competitive with your classmates because there's room for all of you. Firms don't hire 5 people with the intention of hiring 3 permanently. They hire 5 people because they anticipate the need for 5 new attorneys. So there's no reason to feel competitive. And frankly, it hurts you to behave in a competitive manner. So just don't. If you approach people collaboratively and cordially, you will be rewarded for it, because one of the qualities that employers look for is, can this person function well as part of a team? All right. So as I mentioned in the last slide, nothing's beneath you. Okay, so never complain about anything, but at the same time, don't ever be intimidated. Okay, don't, many of us will have moments of imposter syndrome. Do I really belong here? God, these folks go to Yale and Columbia and Harvard. I don't belong here. Well, let me tell you, you do, for 2 reasons. Number one, the firm has already determined that you belong there. But the second reason is, and I can tell you from long experience working at Loyola, nobody is better prepared to succeed in the summer than a Loyola student. Nobody. And I kid you not, I've heard stories over and over of Loyola students teaching Ivy League law students how to do things, like do research or write a memo. You would be surprised at how well prepared you are relative to some of your colleagues. In fact, I'll tell you a quick anecdote. We had a student some years back who was working at a big firm over the summer. She was part of a class, I believe, of 4 summer associates. And at the end of the summer, 2 did not get offers. It might have been a third, but for sure 2 didn't get offers. And she wrote a review of her summer, and in it she mentioned that she had a classmate who went to 2 different Ivy League schools. She said, in most respects, this woman was far more qualified than I was. Our student was a second career person, was probably 20 years out of college, and she didn't feel that she matched up at all. Yet our student got the offer, this double Ivy Leaguer didn't. And our student wrote, apparently, she was not taught the things that I was about being responsive to emails, being professional, doing my best work, getting it done on time, and submitting my timesheets on time. I call them timesheets out of an old habit. Of course, they're now electronic. But if you're working at a law firm, other than a plaintiff's law firms make their money by selling hours. And if you don't record your hours and submit them on a timely basis, you are signaling to the firm that you don't understand the essence of that business. So it's essential that you record your time faithfully and submit it in a timely manner. Otherwise, you are literally asking for trouble. Finally, and this is peculiar to this year because of what's going on with COVID, as many of you may know or may have read on the legal press online, many big law firms are making financial adjustments now that include reductions in pay, furloughing employees, laying off employees. If you're at a firm where that has taken place, be sensitive to that. Okay, you don't have to talk about it. In fact, you're probably better off not talking about it, but be sensitive to the fact that you have a job this summer where other people either no longer do or they're on furlough. They're not getting paid until they get called back. So just be mindful of that, okay? Because there, undoubtedly, there are people at the firm who hurt over that, all right? My friend got laid off, or my friend got furloughed, or I got a pay cut. Suddenly I'm making 15% less than I thought I was gonna make 2 months ago. Be sensitive to that and don't complain about anything that involves finances, expenses, office supplies, the quality of lunch. Just don't complain, period. Now, the good news about working remotely is the dress code is not quite as obvious as it is when we're on site. But I submit to you that you should dress for work every day as you would if you were to appear on site, as opposed to your dining room or the desk in the corner of your office. Find out what the dress code is ahead of time. It's usually business casual, not always. If you're at a court or a government agency, it's typically going to be a suit. But find out what the dress code is and wear it every day. And wear it from the top down, not just from the waist up. I know a lot of us are, we're working in pajamas or t-shirts, whatever the case may be, thinking nobody can see us. Well, let me tell you, when you dress for work, you feel differently about work. And you feel more energy and you feel more focused. Today, I'll have you know, is the first day I've worn a shirt with a collar since Easter Sunday. Okay? And I'm wearing dress slacks and dress shoes. And I have to tell you, it has been transformative. So I suggest that you do the same every day. When it's time to get into the office, obviously it won't be optional. But bottom line is, you want to err on the side of dressing better than associates. Because again, you're interviewing. You don't have the job yet, they do, and err on the side of being conservative. If you find you're looking at your closet in the morning and asking yourself, can I wear this to work? The answer is no, okay? It's gotta be an immediate, hell yeah. If in doubt, don't. Now, this list of things on this slide, I didn't create. I took it from law firm dress codes. Now, again, at home, many of those things won't be obvious. Your shoes won't be obvious. Whether or not you're wearing any won't be obvious, but you want to bear this in mind, particularly when it becomes time to interact in person with your colleagues and your employers. Okay? Now, assuming stay-at-home ends and we get to go work on site, there will be some social events. Actually, there will be some social events that take place over Zoom. And I recommend that you treat those events as you would a live on-site event, which is to say, you'll get an invitation, respond to it, yes or no. Show up on time. If you can't, explain why. If you have to leave early, tell your host ahead of time. Again, the only exception to this is if the event would interfere with getting your work done on time. Okay? Go to as many events as you can, especially the remote ones. And I say that because the employers, they're looking for ways to develop rapport with you. And until the stay-at-home order ends, the only way they can do it is online, okay? Either via Zoom or phone call or other electronic messaging. So take advantage of all the Zoom events that you possibly can, because again, the firm is placing great importance on it. But at the end of the day, you're like a candidate running for office. You want to meet as many people as you can. You want to shake as many hands as you can. So it's a vehicle for you to be successful. And whatever you do, don't be a no-show, okay? If you are RSVP'd, yes, You either show up or you contact the host to explain why you can't show up. But don't just fail to show up, because that will be a reflection of your judgment and your manners, and it will work against you. If you get to, well, whether it's a Zoom or an on-site event, and you may have Zoom cocktail events, be very judicious about your alcohol. Okay? Again, you don't have the job yet. They do. And remember, for those of you who took Latin, there's an important credo that goes in vino veritas, which translates into, I show my real sense when I'm buzzed, my real self. Okay? And we don't want to do that till we have the job. So it's okay not to drink at all. If you do drink, I would drink very sparingly. And if that's too vague, I would have one drink. And that's it. Because again, your career potentially is at risk. When it comes time to have meals, when again, the stay-at-home ends, don't be picky or complain about food unless it's not prepared as you asked for it. If you ask for it to be well done and you got back something that's pink or undercooked, by all means say, excuse me, could you have this put back, have this cooked a little bit more? Don't apologize. You're not doing anything wrong. People have this tendency to say, I'm sorry, but this is raw and I ordered my food cooked. Don't apologize. You are entitled to have your food done the way you asked for it. So simply say, this is undercooked. Could you have it cooked a little bit more? If you do have dietary restrictions, whether you follow a halal diet, or whether you have food allergies, that's fine. Just tell your host ahead of time if it's going to be an event at the firm or at an attorney's home. And if you're at a restaurant, of course, it's fine to ask the server, does that have nuts in it? Does that have gluten in it? But don't make a big deal out of it. Make it short and sweet, and then move on with your meal, okay? I mentioned earlier, don't follow the associates or don't act as though you're part of the same crew or team as the associates because they have the job, you don't. Sometimes associates in a social setting will have too much to drink and they'll goad the summer clerks or the interns to follow along. Don't do that. Even if they say, it's okay, it's just us, it's not okay, all right? Remember, I'm interviewing, okay? Real simply, social media, there is no privacy. There's none. Maximize the privacy settings on whatever media that you use. Don't friend people at the firm. Don't invite them to LinkedIn. Now, if they invite you, okay, it's fine to respond. But otherwise, don't affirmatively invite them because it might be awkward for them, okay? If you have a blog, don't use it over the summer unless it is law related. If you have a blog on whistleblower litigation, by all means, feel free to write about the latest cases that come down on it. But otherwise, don't do it because people will find your blog and it can hurt you. We had a student some years ago who was summering at a big firm, and one day after lunch on her blog, she wrote something to the effect that, I have to go back to this boring assignment for this annoying client. And somebody at the firm saw it that day, and she was terminated the next day. The reason being, number one, she had poor judgment, but number two, you don't bite the hand that feeds you, okay? The clients pay our salaries. You want to complain about one, do it in private at home, but for the love of God, don't do it online. And don't surf the web at work. If you must, take your phone to the restroom. In fact, there are some cases where you don't have full internet access at your employer. I know that's certainly the case at the courts, but the bottom line is the employer's time is the employer's time. And don't be frivolous about it, honor it, okay? All right, a few quick things. We're almost done. Email. Again, I go back to the very beginning. Learn your employer's preferences. And it's fine. Ask them, how do you like your emails? Or Do you have preferences as far as the length of an email? Be as formal as you can, be brief, and start with the most important thing. Okay? And make your subject line informative. Don't just say quick question. Say question, Ray, disability research in the 48 states. Or if you can be more specific, do it. I make a point, particularly with my colleagues and other internal recipients, if I can ask my question in the subject line, I will. And I'll just say no message afterwards. Or if I just need to convey information, will arrive by 11 o'clock, no message, boom. And that saves them the time of opening the email. Now, people get a lot of email, that time leads up. Now, avoid email chains. We all have the experience where we get an email that begins with lunch the day before Thanksgiving, and 6 weeks later, that subject line is continuing even though the conversation has changed 4 different times with 6 different subjects. Don't do that. Change the subject line every time the topic changes, because it makes life more convenient for the recipient. It will also make life more convenient for you if you need to be searching for something later on. If there's a contact or if there's a citation that was in this email chain, you may not remember that it all began with lunch the day before Thanksgiving. So change it every time. Your recipients will appreciate it, and there's absolutely no reason not to. Now, I already mentioned, don't rely exclusively on written digital communication. Use the telephone, use Zoom, use FaceTime, but you want to have live contact with people because it helps them develop a relationship with you. Don't be shy about that. And respond to every email, even if it's just to say acknowledged. Okay? So that they don't have to follow up with you and say, did you get my email? Now, speaking of follow-up, with your assignments, make sure that the assigner received the product or the assignment that they asked for. So sometimes what will happen is somebody will send something off on the day of the deadline. Let's do Thursday at 5. They don't hear anything back, but they figure, okay, I don't want to bug them. They've got a lot of stuff to do. And then 4 days later, as the client deadline is approaching, the attorney contacts you and says, where is that thing? I asked for it on Thursday. And you're thinking, holy crap, I sent it to you on Thursday. Always confirm that they got it. Not immediately, but certainly within 24 hours or the next morning. Writing to see if you received, or writing to confirm you received my memo. That averts emergencies, and it shows that you follow up, you're dependable, you stay on top of things. If you make a mistake, own it. Never blame it on somebody else. Never throw somebody else under the bus. Even if your assistant made the mistake, if you didn't catch it, it's on you, okay? So own it. Everybody has much more respect for somebody who says, my bad, I'm really sorry, how can I correct that? Or alternatively, my bad, I'm sorry, I fixed it, I corrected it, I resubmitted it. People will respect you for that, okay? And if you're not sure how to fix it, ask. But if you hide a mistake, hoping it will go unnoticed, that can be absolutely fatal to your future at that firm, because you rob the employer of the opportunity to fix it. Now, if you're having a particular issue, either you think somebody hates you or your assistant is just not responsive to you, whatever the case may be, reach out either to the person who's overseeing the summer program, it's usually 2 attorneys, or the recruiting manager, okay, because it is her job, it's usually a her, to make sure that you have a successful summer. Raise your concerns with them. And if you can't get satisfaction there, or if the topic is delicate and you feel like, I'm not sure I feel comfortable speaking with the recruiting manager about the fact that my assistant is hitting on me relentlessly, then call your counselor at Career Development, okay? Because we're here to help you. And remember, the firm wants you to be successful. Firm doesn't want to be sued by you, wants you to be successful. So part of judgment probably, if I had to say there's just one sentence about good judgment, it's don't be a jackass. Okay, just don't be a jackass. I mentioned earlier, don't make jokes. Just don't. It's not necessary. And if you feel compelled, make sure that they're neither political, racist, sexist, or homophobic. There are lots of ways to offend people at law firms. Don't let this be one of them. And sometimes people do it with just throwaway words. You know, they're not even thinking. I met with a contractor a week or so ago, and things were going fine until he used the word illegals to refer to the employees of certain other contractors. And the first thing that my wife and I discussed after the meeting ended was, he said, illegals. There's no reason to rub people the wrong way, whether or not your consciousness is good or bad. Okay, our job here, it's to have good consciousness, but most importantly, it's not to screw up our summer. Okay, just like I said, avoid gossip and avoid being observed when gossip is being spoken. Stay away from other controversial conversations of any kind. You just don't want to be tainted. At work, we don't touch people, period. I used to say, except for shaking hands, now we're not even going to do that, okay? We just don't touch people at work, period. We don't date people at work because it's just not necessary and it's dangerous. And if you do socialize with anybody at work, say they're your peers or your other summer person, be very judicious about it, okay? Be friendly, but be judicious, especially when it comes to alcohol. Now, as I mentioned earlier, even if you decide on the second day of work that you would rather work for Satan than work at this law firm after graduation, work to earn an offer anyway, because it's a credential. When you go back on the market as a 2L or as a 3L, the first question or the second question you'll be asked is, so did you get an offer from your summer with fill in the blanks, with Paul Hastings, with Buckhalter, with Gibson Dunn? And you want to be able to say, well, yes, I did. And then they'll ask why you don't want to take it. But you want to be able to say, yes, I earned it. Because sometimes what will happen is people will decide that, you know, halfway through the summer, they'll decide, you know, I don't think litigation is really for me. And this firm does only litigation. And that feeling becomes perceptible. And the employers start to sense she's really not that into us, or he's really not that into the work we do. At the end of the day, they may think your work's great, but if they think you're not interested in them, they're not going to waste an offer on you because they have to sit and wait, 21 days for you to reply. So earn the offer even if you don't want it. If you don't get an offer for whatever reason, accept that graciously and calmly, and work through the rest of the summer as though you're still trying to earn an offer. And the reason is employers have great respect for people who do that. They expect you just to shut down once you find or you learn you're not going to get an offer. Now, by the way, in many cases, you may not learn that till after the summer is over, but sometimes you'll learn it a week or two before. Continue working as though you want to earn an offer, because you'll earn their respect. Quite frankly, they'll probably feel guilty that you were so gracious and hardworking even after learning that, and they'll go out of their way to try to help you find another job or at least be positive references for you. Now, finally, if you do get an offer, don't wait until the deadline to accept it, because the pace at which you accept is viewed as a signal of your enthusiasm for the firm. It's kind of like dating. Do you want to wait 2 weeks to be asked out again, or do you want to be asked out again in 2 days? Now, there's a myth that circulates, or at least has in the past among students, that if you accept your offer quickly, you are seen as desperate. People, I don't know about you, but I am desperate. I need a job. And if I accept it quickly, the employer's not going to think, whoa, that was easy. That guy must be desperate. They're going to think, awesome. He feels as enthusiastic about us as we feel about him. Okay. Now, if you need time, If you're not in a position to accept quickly because you're waiting to hear from somebody else, you're waiting to hear where your fiance is being selected for their medical residency program, that's okay. And in fact, I'd say tell the firm, I'm really pleased to receive the offer, but I can't reply until I find out where Virgil is going to do his residency. Tell the firm, that's okay. But don't make them wonder about you over the course of a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because they'll assume you're not interested. And by the time you accept the offer, they'll think, okay, she had no other alternatives, so she did it reluctantly. You want to match their enthusiasm to the maximum extent you can. So the bottom line of all of this is, it's easy to be successful. Just treat it as an interview, do your best work, and don't be a jackass. It's that simple. And with that, I open the floor to any questions you may have. I appreciate your attention, and please don't be bashful because someone else will share the same question, I promise you. Okay, is Jonathan unmuted?
Hi, Dean Sure.
Hi.
Hi. I have a question with regards to an earlier comment you made with regards to the social events and deadlines with work.
Yes.
So I actually spoke to the 3L student who was at my firm the year before me, and he actually told me with regards to the getting invited to events and with the work. Now, right, things are different right now, so I don't know how much it will come up this summer, but he actually told me that he strongly encourages me to ask for an extension and go to these events because this is the opportunity for you to engage with the other attorneys. And if you aren't really going to the events, then it actually is a negative thing. And so he told me that he would honestly recommend, like, if he saw that, he told me if I saw there was going to be a conflict, that he recommended it, asking for an extension. Now, because I'm actually at a firm where our summer was shortened to 5 weeks.
Yes.
So now I was thinking about that and what you said, and now I'm kind of, where do I stand with that? Because they had already admittedly told us, there's not going to be that many room for social events, right? So just, I guess for clarification, because now I've heard, two opposite things.
Yeah. So I agree with that rising 3L, that you want to go to as many events as you can, because again, we're running for office, right? But there's danger if I go to the event and I didn't get my work done on time. So I think it's okay to ask for an extension in a given instance, but I would be reluctant to do it consistently.
Right. Only if necessary.
What I would say is, if in doubt, speak to Tina or her coordinator. Speak to the recruiting office and say, I have a dilemma.
Okay.
Because yes, you want to meet as many people as possible and you want to give them the opportunity to get to know and like you, but you also don't want, and again, I think you're right. I don't think there'll be that many events. I think, if we're lucky, you might be at the office 2 weeks this summer, 3 at the most. But at the same time, we don't want to appear like as someone who can't get his work done on time.
Right. Okay.
So I think it's fine to ask for 1. I wouldn't ask for 3. But again, if in doubt, the recruiting manager is there to field your questions in a non-judgmental way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's actually really helpful.
Question. Thank you. Anybody else? I covered it all? Man, I'm good. Any other questions? Well, if you think of something after today or after this moment, feel free to shoot me an email or to ask your counselor or give me a call. We could have a Zoom meeting. However you want to convey your question, please make a point to do so, because again, we share a mutual goal, and that's for you to be successful this summer, whether or not it's a paid gig, whether or not it's a position that leads to a permanent offer. We discussed at the beginning, there are different metrics for success. And wherever we work, there are ways to achieve them, and our mutual goal is for you to achieve them. So please don't hesitate if you think of something after this moment. Okay. Well, thanks for your attention, everybody. I appreciate it very much.